It's a very special episode of Locked On Coyotes. It's the beginning of our Grow the Game series. We'll be highlighting people and organizations dedicating their time to helping grow the game of hockey right here in our wonderful state of Arizona. Our first guest, Arizona's very own Lyndsey Fry. All that on today's show, so be sure to stay locked on Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everyone. This is Locked On Coyotes. I'm Robin Leonio at Robin_Leonio on Twitter. That is Carl Pavlik right beside me at Carl Pavlik FFH. This is a special episode, our first of the Locked On Coyotes Grow the Game series. We're going to highlight people who help grow the game of hockey here in Arizona. And who better to start off with than the Arizona Coyotes radio color analyst, the former U.S. Olympian, winning silver in Sochi, and the president of the Arizona Kachinas, Lyndsey Fry. Lyndsey, it is an honor to have you on this show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
First, so I want to go ahead and start things off with the easiest question of this interview, and that is, does hockey belong in Arizona?
That is an easy question because it's a simple yes, but I will expand on it a bit, and I'm sure we'll be doing a lot of that throughout the podcast. It's funny, when I was growing up, there were a lot of people, even people that went to my school. I grew up 7 minutes away from what's now Ice End Chandler. And when I was growing up and playing, it was amazing how many kids at my school are like, wait, there's hockey here? I'm like, yeah, do you not drive down Chandler or down Ray ever? So I think that there was a long time where there was kind of an educational gap. Obviously, being in the desert, people don't immediately think about hockey in the ways that they do in Canada and in Minnesota. But when you look at hockey as a whole, from the time that I was a little girl to now, it's incredible. The amount of players that are now playing at the highest level. I was fortunate enough to play in the Olympics on the women's side. We've had a number of women play Division I and NCAA or Division III NCAA hockey. And then, of course, you've got Austin Matthews, Matthew Nyes, who just went to the Olympics in Beijing. We've had a lot of incredible hockey products come out of this state. So in my opinion, there's no denying that it belongs in the desert.
Oh yeah, and definitely a lot more teams too. Like there's the Tucson Roadrunners now. ASU has an NCAA hockey program. Things that weren't happening when I started talking about the Coyotes, or even when I moved to Arizona in 2000.
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot more available now, I think, for people to see, which is important. We talk about it all the time. It doesn't matter what topic, what industry, what aspect of life, representation matters. And now you've got, on the men's side, you've got multiple college teams, including the D1 team at ASU. You've got college teams at GCU, at NAU, at U of A. There's men's teams at all of those places. And when you're a little kid, you don't know the difference, right? You see what you perceive as high-level hockey, and you believe there's a place for me. On the women's side, now we've got the all-girls program with the Kachinas that I run. We've got the ASU and GCU both have ACHA club women's teams. So it's incredible. We have little girls who are in our Kachinas program, 7, 8, 9 years old. They go to an ASU women's hockey game and they want to play at ASU, or same situation with GCU. That didn't happen when I was a little girl. I didn't know that women's hockey was a thing until the Olympics were here in 2002 in Salt Lake City. That was my first understanding of what the Olympics were, and I was 10 years old by that point.
And that's an amazing thing too, to see how just how far that growth has come. And a lot of what you do is mainly since coming back from the Olympics in Sochi has been helping grow the Arizona Kachinas, the girls hockey program, and seeing that grow. I believe earlier this year they announced it went to Tier 1. So they had a Tier 1 program. all that kind of stuff. And again, like a lot of that stuff that you've helped become a massive part of. And it's awesome to see this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's been a journey, and obviously there are so many aspects of growth opportunity when it comes to hockey. You know, we are really trying to get into a lot of different areas, because one of the challenges that we're having, you know, nationwide is just how do we continue to diversify the face of hockey. I mean, literally this morning we had a black hockey panel for the Coyotes, where we had people from the NHL, we had people from you know, different programs around the valley. We had all different, you know, African American people come and speak to us and talk about this issue of we've got to diversify. And so, you know, I kind of have my two roles, well, three, but my day job with the Coyotes, one of them is the Kachinas role, and then the other is very focused in our general hockey development. And we are constantly trying to figure out ways to change the face of hockey, whether that's a Los Jalitos program that we've ran, really targeting, you know, some of those Spanish-speaking families. How do we get the Hispanic community, who is such a large part of our community here in Arizona, more involved in what we're trying to do, introduce them to hockey in a way that maybe is different than you introduce it to other people. We started up an LGBTQ plus program called Pride Growlers for adults, which was incredible because I think what I loved about it as part of the LGBTQ community myself is I loved the fact that it wasn't just open to people in that community, it was open to allies. Because I think that piece is really important as we change the game, is it can't just be about those communities and compartmentalizing them in these little pockets. It's no, we've got to truly integrate with everybody and really change how this looks as a community as a whole. And then of course, you know, my lane is very much focused in girls hockey. It's what I'm most comfortable and confident with, able to, I think, initiate change just personally with my background. And that matters too. And I think, you know, the more that we can change the face of the game, the more we're going to be able to grow the game.
So one of the things that really stood out when you were mentioning trying to grow the Hispanic audience is the Coyotes have Luis Hernandez doing the Spanish language commentary now. Has there been a positive community response for that?
Yeah, I think there's been a great response, and Luis is he's fantastic. When I'm up in the booth, I talk to him before a lot of our games, and you know, what's really cool is just how I think engaged he is with it. You know, he wants to really continue to learn the sport, learn the players, try to, you know, I think because he's passionate about how do I take this story of hockey and bring it to my community in a way that it's gonna resonate with them. But yeah, I mean, I think everything on our Los Yotes social media platforms that really highlight him and his work are being received very well. And I think, you know, a perfect example of him being able to take something that is very tied to Hispanic culture with soccer or football is just even the way he announces the goals. You listen to the way he announces the goals versus the way like my play-by-play partner announces goals, it's very different. But what he's able to do, I think, is very inviting for that community, which is cool.
And again, that's the kind of, and that's the important part, right? About growing the game and getting everyone to get that attractiveness level and kind of being able to get themselves acquainted with all that and seeing that for me. And again, as a member of Hispanic community, as I appreciate seeing stuff like that. I appreciate seeing as much of the growth that they tapped into the Latino fan base, as well as you mentioned too, of the LGBTQ community. So all that stuff like that, like so many communities out there that kind of like don't like on the surface, like in the NHL, you don't see it because it's still not there yet. But it's amazing that we're trying to grow it here.
Well, and I think the importance is that grassroots, right? Like maybe we don't see it in the NHL yet, but if we put the work in at the 5, 6, 7-year-old level, these kids getting into hockey now, imagine what it's going to look like in 15, 20, 30 years. That's what I get super excited about, because you cannot, I think when you are trying to initiate this type of change and this type of growth, you cannot be in it for the short game. Yes, there are short-term wins and small programs that you can start, but you have to be in it for the long game. And I'm proud to be part of an organization that I truly believe is in it for the long game.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Austin Matthews before and Matthew Knives. If you look at it, they grew up and watched the Coyotes as kids, and it took years to play and develop and grow until they become players themselves, and they get to represent the state on that level. And so, yeah, it just takes lots of time for people to really grow. And I get some people want short-term, responses, but so often it's the long game.
Well, and I think the cool thing about where we're at right now in hockey is people take a lot of pride when they are one of few, right? They generally are very proud of their community. They're very proud of where they come from. And you feel like, I genuinely feel like a person from Alberta or Calgary, we'll just say, who makes to the NHL is going to feel very differently than, let's say, a person from Albuquerque, New Mexico, who someday makes it to the NHL. That person from Albuquerque is going to feel this responsibility of, wow, I came from a market where nobody else had come from before, and I made it. That they're going to have that feeling of, I've got to give back. And that's kind of how it's been for me. Like, I was the first hockey player, male or female, from the state of Arizona to go play for Team USA in the Olympics. The amount of pride I feel in that, like, we all were so proud to represent our country, but for me to be able to represent girls, women, my state, the desert, states, kind of the Southwestern region, that was huge for me. And I think the more, I'm so excited now. We've got, the first gay player in the NHL system who's out. I doubt he's the first, but he's out, and that's a big deal, right? He's going to probably feel that want to go and make a difference. And I think that's what's really cool about where we're at right now is these change makers, these passionate people are here. They're ready to give back, and I'm just so excited to see what they do.
And that goes to beyond, I'm sure, beyond like directly wanting to give back. Obviously, like yourself, you definitely want to directly give back, but even indirectly, when you became that first hockey athlete to go represent Arizona in Team USA, I'm sure you again, as you mentioned, male or female, but a lot of young girls, especially, probably looked up to you and like, I want to be like her one day.
Yeah, and I'm so fortunate to be leading the Kachinas in that way. We have an incredible team of people who have made it what it is. But anytime I get a little girl who, like, at this point wasn't even alive in 2014, when they say that I want to play in the Olympics like Coach Lyndsey, that's the coolest feeling in the world, because you know that you've made that difference. And they weren't even there to see it. They weren't even there to watch it. So you're absolutely right. That's an amazing feeling. And what's incredible about kids is they are so impressionable. It doesn't take a lot. I mean, like I said, our kids get so excited just to know that, like, they get equally as excited to know that their coach was a player at Grand Canyon University as they do about me playing in the Olympics. Like, they don't have that perception. So they just see someone who in their mind has made it, and that's what continues to inspire the next generation, which is so cool.
We're talking with Lyndsey Fry on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. We got to take a quick brief to step aside, although I hope you're enjoying this conversation. But first, I want to tell you guys about BetOnline, because BetOnline, right now, football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to wherever the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right down to Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet online, where the game starts. Every time I see that, especially with how the Kachinas has grown, and I've only been here in Arizona for 6 years, and like in the 6 years I've been here in Arizona, I like already seen the sport grow as much as I did, and I've been watching the Kachinas go as much as I can because again, I love seeing the growth of hockey outside of men's hockey because everyone wants to cover men's hockey, but what the girls too.
Well, yeah, and that's a whole other issue is just where is women's hockey going? I won't go too deeply into it, but like unfortunately right now it's pretty fractured. There are, a couple different leagues, a couple different entities. We don't really have like a true aggregate of all the best players today. And I hope that we can eventually get there because it's amazing how many people who I work with in hockey, we see hockey games every other night with the Coyotes, who come up to me and say, I cannot believe how good the women's gold medal game was at the Olympics. And I love that, so many of my colleagues stayed up till 1 a.m. watching that game. That's incredible. But it's always odd for me, right? As a high level female player, it's odd to me when people are like surprised at how good the product is. But that's where you get into this whole other issue of like sports business, the marketing, the sales tactics, the advertising dollars, like all of that plays a role when it comes to equity in, I would say, any business, but just in hockey. That's going to be a big push. And I think the more that those of us who do work at the grassroots level can continue to grow the fan base of women's sports, the better off it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on this week's episode, which would have been last week for the listeners. The women's gold medal game is one of those games where you do not want to miss it. And yeah, like you said, it's surprising when people don't know that because it feels like it is the worst kept secret in hockey. Like everyone should know that. And I mean, that's the fault of marketing that more people don't because all you gotta do is just watch once and you're just like, oh yeah, no, this is the good stuff. Yeah, just this every single time.
All of us try to here at the Locked On Network. We all try to promote women's hockey as best we can because again, like we've already known how amazing it is, and we try to do that. I'm always proud. I carry this with me everywhere I go. It's got some members of the women's team from 2018 on here, and I'm just like, that makes me proud to keep that around. But again, women's hockey is an amazing thing, and it's great that like someone like you is helping teach up young girls to eventually become potentially really good female athletes in hockey.
Yep, absolutely.
So we do notice a lot more Kachinas kind of stuff in Coyotes games and on social media now. Was there a concerted effort to kind of push that, or was it more just kind of a natural response like, hey, we have something good going on, let's talk about it?
Do you mean the girls program specifically or just the Kachina logo in general?
The girls program specifically, because I definitely have noticed that a lot more.
Well, no, it's gotten incredible support. I think when it's obviously been a little bit of a tumultuous time. Like I don't think any of us shy away from that with the organization and just various things that have happened over the years. But I think what's incredible about what we've done, and I think just shows the commitment of our front office to grow the girls' game and to just continue to press forward with the Kachinas over the last 3 or 4 years. That's just a really heartwarming story. I mean, that's the type of stuff people want to hear. They want to know that we are being like literally transformative in the youth hockey space by creating more and more opportunities for young girls. Like when I was born, there were less than 30 girls in the entire state playing hockey. And now we've got 250 in our program alone. And that's grown from our first year. I mean, we've only been an official program for 3 years. And we've managed to accomplish a lot. I mean, we had a team, our first team go to nationals last year. We've grown by a couple teams every season. We have kids in the house recreational levels. We have kids at the highest travel levels. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Robin, getting tier 1, that is historic. That people don't necessarily understand that. That is historic. The fact that for the first time in Arizona's history, you can come in as a 5-year-old little girl and do our Little Layton's Girls Learn to Play program, then go to Small Fries and continue to get skills, then go to our Kachinas development program, which is our house league, then go to our elite program where you can play A hockey, then tier 2 hockey, now tier 1 hockey, and then go off to college. Like that ecosystem, that funnel has never been complete in Arizona's history. And the fact that we've been able to do that in 3 years and accomplish what we've been able to accomplish, I think that's why people lock onto this story. And that's why we as an organization want to just keep beating that drum.
And yeah, and that's why we keep that's why we're trying to always hammer this kind of stuff home, because it's stuff like that, right? You know, having that kind of full on pipeline, the growth of the Kachinas, the growth of overall just hockey development here in Arizona, because that's it's been amazing. Yeah, and as you mentioned, just in the last few years, how fast it's grown.
Yeah, and it's been. I gotta take a moment to give credit where credit's due. I mean, unfortunately, I don't know if you guys saw, but unfortunately, we lost Matt Schott about 2 months ago now. And you know, Matt worked for the Coyotes for 9+ years, and the passion that he was able to bring as a kid growing up in the Arizona hockey system, and I mean, you look at the list of things that he accomplished. I mean, almost every public school in Maricopa County has hockey in their PE curriculum because of Matt. Our Pride Growlers program, various things that we've done with the Gila River communities to get more Native American kids involved. He was I call him my work husband, but he was my right and my left arm in the growth of the Kachinas program. I mean, that he's done so much, and our department wouldn't be what it is from a hockey development perspective without him. So I just need to give him a little credit, because he was an incredible person and very passionate about growing this game.
I'm so glad you brought up Matt. I was actually just gonna bring him up in just a sec, but like I'm glad you brought him up and talked about the impact that he made, because again, we all saw that news happen, and we mentioned several times, I think a couple times on this show, of understanding the impact he's also made as part of the hockey development in Arizona. So again, I'm glad you brought him up, because again, that's another big name. We would have loved to have him on if it was ever possible, but obviously, unfortunately not. But it's but
you would have had to do a lot of swearing editing if you had him
on. We would just made a very special episode. It's fine.
There you go. Yeah, just put a little. He would have loved that. Put a little parental advisory symbol on there.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sure they'll handle it.
Yeah.
You mentioned the growth that we've had in just 3 years. Like, do you guys think, like, what's the next 3 years going to look like? Like, what are the kind of future plans for growing girls hockey in Arizona?
Oh, I think about it every day. This next year is going to be interesting. We basically, the way that our travel program, or our elite program, we call it, is broken down is our top teams are our green teams, next level is our red teams, and then the next level are our black teams. This past season, officially under the USA Hockey designations, green was tier 2, and then our red and black were technically considered like A or recreational. Now everybody moves up. So all of our teams are, for the most part, really successful in their leagues, but now we're going to the next level. So that means if you were playing at the A level last year, you're playing at the AA level this upcoming year. Same thing with if you play AA, you're playing AAA. That's a big jump. And so I think these next 3 years are going to be full of really positive growing pains. I think our girls are going to get humbled in a lot of ways, but with that comes development, right? With that, they're going to get better. They're going to understand what it takes to get to that next level, to push themselves. And then through just playing at those levels, they're going to get a different level of exposure that they maybe wouldn't have otherwise been able to get, so that they can pursue their college hockey dreams. It's going to be an interesting couple years in that regard. And then, but to answer your question, in 3 years, I want to see us, well over 500 for all of our teams playing at that new level. That's kind of the goal, I think, this upcoming year. Like if we can hit 500 with our teams, maybe, have some success at tournaments, that's a big win. But in 3 years, we want to absolutely be competitive at all those levels. And then on our development side of the program, or of our house league, we're really excited. For context for people listening, there's 4 rinks in town that have house leagues in the Phoenix metro area. So you've got AZ Ice Gilbert, Ice Den Chandler, Ice Den Scottsdale, and AZ Ice Peoria. The way that our development program works is we basically form a team and then just put it within their house league. So they play against the co-ed teams that are predominantly boys. The goal was always to have teams in all 4 rinks. And we are finally going to expand into Peoria this year with the Mite team, and we will officially be in all 4. So what I'd love to see eventually there is, all right, now they're all playing in their 4 rinks around town. How do we let them continue to play within their local rink league? But then can we create a little mini league where they all get to play each other? And now it's not just playing against the co-ed teams, it's playing against girls who are like them, which was always the mission of what we're trying to do.
Are you doing the scheduling for that? Because that just sounds really complicated, and you have 2 other jobs.
We have an interesting structure with a lot of very, very passionate people. So Matt was serving as our elite hockey director. We've posted to hire to fill in that role, of course, with him now gone. But we've got an amazing board of directors, just very passionate people who want to see these girls not only become good hockey players, but become incredible young women. And then for the development side specifically, my best friend of 20 years who I played hockey with growing up, we actually flew back and forth to Colorado together to play in high school so that we could get better competition. She is our development program director. So she will be doing all of that scheduling. And I'm not a scheduler. I can own my weaknesses.
I mean, that's definitely a lot of growth, and it sounds like there's just so much to do that I wasn't even thinking about. But yeah, now that you say that, everyone going up another level is gonna be tough. I can definitely imagine some tough starts, and then you finally get in the groove. It'll be do you guys have plans to make sure that people are able to stay engaged and grow through those growing pains? Because
it's fortunately at those, we've got some really experienced coaches who have been through this at the boys level. Not every single coach, but a few who I think can mentor some of the other coaches to help them support their players as they navigate this. But part of it too is just there has to be that level of belief, right? Like our 19U team, for example, this year, there was a lot of concern from parents, from players about, wait, why are we playing a tier 1 tournament right out of the gate? Because we have had our teams play some AAA or tier 1 competition this year just to see where they're at. And, they got pummeled pretty good in the first tournament at the beginning of the season. But they saw what the level looked like. So when they came back, it's a different motivation. It's a different understanding at practice every day when you all of a sudden now know what you're up against. And it's just been so cool to see that team in particular and our other teams just progressively get better against that level over time. And I think that's how you keep them engaged, is you keep reminding them what we're working for. And they have tangible ways that they can see that, which is cool.
That's absolutely awesome. I want to talk to you a little bit about actually the just another side of hockey that you have to do, and that's your job as a color commentator. Because I work as a broadcaster. Obviously, I do this podcast. I went to school for broadcast journalism. I do a lot of, and it's a whole nother side, a whole another side of things too, of helping grow the game is yourself as a color radio broadcaster. People hear your voice and also get inspired in that way too. I'm sure that there's other things that you probably heard several times on that as well.
Yeah, it's been a blast. I kind of fell into the broadcasting world. Obviously, just throughout my hockey career, I was really fortunate to get a lot of media training, but it was much more like in front of a camera, question and answer, very similar to what we're doing here. Jumping into the booth and doing color is very different, but it's so fun. And I think one of the things I really love about it is it helps keep me connected to the game, which may sound odd because of all the other things I do, but like when I'm in my Kachinas role, like it's much more of a business hat. It's not so much a hockey hat. Hockey just happens to be the industry. With my radio role, like I get to talk hockey. I get to kind of tell stories about my career. I get to, think about, what are these guys thinking about going into the locker room because I've been there. And so it really just, that's where I think I feel the most connected to the game, and it's fun. And I think, a lot of the players respect me for it, because not that they didn't respect me before, but like now they know I'm talking hockey about it. Like I have been trusted to relay their performance to listeners and fans. And it's been really cool. And I think to your question about, has that inspired people? One of the coolest things that happened after I got this gig was one of our Kachinas players. She was, probably 9 at the time. Got in 20, this would have been 2020. It would have been 2020. She got a radio for Christmas. Like, who gets a radio in 2020, especially if you're a 10-year-old kid, a 9-year-old kid? Like, that was, for me, that was the coolest thing ever. And truthfully is a big reason why I said yes to the job in the first place, because I knew that I was one of only, I think, 4 women to ever do this, ever, in NHL's history, and the first in Arizona. And I wanted to be able to inspire that next little girl who maybe doesn't have a clue that there's a future in broadcasting for her. So it's that has been a real blessing to be able to do that.
How fun has it been? Oh, go ahead, Carl.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, well, oftentimes, like, you see male players, some of them will think like, hey, maybe I'll go into media afterwards. I'll go into broadcasting because that's a role. Like, that probably, like, when you were playing, did that even cross your mind as a possibility?
No, I didn't think about it. And it's interesting because where I had always thought of female broadcasters in hockey was at the Olympics. And for the most part, it has been the same people for the last 3 Olympics. So to me, I was like, I don't have any experience in this. The opportunities are so slim. Like, when am I ever going to be able to do this? So I just never thought about it. But that's why I was so fortunate when they approached me with it. Because it's really been a gift, and it's been so much fun, and I've learned so much. And now I can, talk to these young girls about, absolutely, there's an opportunity. And as women's hockey continues to grow, like, one of the things that came out of this is I actually went down to Florida and called a couple games for the Premier Hockey Federation, which is one of the women's hockey leagues. It's up in New England, but we do a remote broadcast. That never would have happened if I hadn't been given this opportunity. I'm getting a lot more TV time now that Biz is getting more and more busy. So it's really been amazing. And I think one of the coolest things about it has been how receptive my male counterparts have been. And women cannot, it's very difficult to succeed in this role if you do not have an incredible number of male allies around you. And I've just been so lucky between Matt McConnell, Tyson Nash, Paul Bissonnette, and then of course my play-by-play partner with Bob Heathouse. They're like my brothers, and I love it.
Absolutely love to hear that. And again, as someone like myself who wants to go into broadcasting as much as I can, like it's cool to see people succeed and people have fun with that. Because I listen to your broadcasts because I live in Tucson, so sometimes it's not good reception down here. I don't think there's but I try to listen to as much as I can, and just the dynamic between you and Bob, it's just so fun to listen to, and I just want to keep listening.
I so appreciate that. Heater and I obviously have, a pretty significant age gap, which I think makes it so fun because every once in a while I'll throw little curveballs at him. Like, he is so professional, so put together, and we'll talk about it being someone's birthday on the broadcast, and I'll be like, "Hey, Heater, what were you doing on your 17th birthday?" He's just like, well, probably Earth, Wind, Fire, but I'm not really sure. We just, it's amazing, like, how important it is to have just a great relationship with your broadcast partner. And I'm so lucky that I have Heater.
Yeah. I mean, even from like everyone's perspective, it's great when there's some kind of chemistry, and you guys do have really good chemistry. Like, as a listener, it's
And
like,
what's really interesting is I think women are often trained to be very polished in the way that we present ourselves in the media. It's how I was trained from, an Olympic standpoint. Is these are all the things to say, these are all the things not to say. This is how you should stand, this is how you should speak, all those things. And then you look at a guy like Biz, who I love and adore, but like is able to say anything that comes out of his mouth. But it was interesting because when I first came on the broadcast, I think I was a little tight. Like I felt like I had to be in this box that I had always been put in. And what I've been so fortunate to learn from Biz, from Tyson, like, I'm always going to be different than them, and they're different from each other. But what I've learned is that our job is not only to share the game and talk about the hockey part of it, it's to entertain people. And it's been really cool to learn from, I think, two of the most entertaining people in the business. And I definitely try to emulate some of their behavior. Not all.
That makes sense, especially that role where it's very much, you're providing like the player insight, but it's also more of an entertaining role versus the informational one.
And on radio too, because radio is very different than television. Because
it's so different. And that's been a learning curve as well. Now that I'm doing both, radio, I love. For anyone that's listening, that's interested in broadcasting, I love radio because it's so creative. Like, we don't have a producer in our ear. We pretty much have full range to talk about whatever we want, whenever we want. And when you're watching the game, there's, especially as an analyst, like, there's sometimes these kind of hidden points that you want to make that in TV, like, they kind of are in your ear telling you what you're going to talk about. Radio is so flexible, which I think is fun and definitely allows creativity to come out.
Yeah, that those words are very similar to what the play-by-play commentator for the Arizona Wildcats has said down here in Tucson. So it seems like the very same sentiment, and I guess it seems to be the case. I mean, I did college radio, so that's how it goes.
Nice.
Anyways, I want to thank you for coming on. We want to give these last few minutes, give you an opportunity to again share your platform, share the Kachinas, tell people how they can support the Kachinas and support what you do.
Yeah, plug everything.
Oh gosh, all right, here we go. For the Kachinas, we're at Arizona Kachinas on everything. I would highly encourage you to follow, even if you've just got a daughter or a niece or anyone that you think would be interested in that. Our social media crew for the Kachinas puts in a lot of work to just make it awesome content that no matter who you are is going to make you feel good. So Arizona Kachinas for that. And then all of my stuff, Lyndsey Fry 18. It's Lyndsey_Fry_18. 18 is my Olympic number. Pretty much across all platforms. And it's interesting. I'm making kind of this. I still am very, very involved in hockey, but like, I am so interested in non-hockey related things. And particularly what I've been really into as of late is this new concept called Loop that is sort of my like lifestyle framework. And I think it's about finding balance between your work and your personal and just investing time in the things that you actually care about. So literally just launched that this past week. So if you are not a hockey person, that's totally fine. I hope to put out a lot of content that will be interesting to you.
Absolutely. Lyndsey,
Cool.
thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it. Again, as a perfect start to this Grow the Game series that we're doing here in for this podcast, we excited to have more people on as much as we can, as much people who are part of the development program in the Valley, down here in Tucson, elsewhere in the state, because Arizona is an amazing place for hockey.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you guys so much.
We're going to close things off on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you're yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Just search up Locked On Coyotes. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Locked On Coyotes, on Instagram at Locked On Coyotes, on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robin_Leano. That's Robin with a Y _LEANO. Carl Pavlik is Carl Pavlik FFH. Interact with us. Ask the question you might have. We can answer them on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to this episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.